this is not going to be covered, significant deficiencies and outstanding performers. If you have technical questions, I know someone emailed me, I think it was Katrina, emailed me and asked me what Envision uses for their sanitary survey, what codes they use. Because I don't work with Envision, I don't have that information. So I would direct those questions to Wendy Killu with the Primacy Liaison Unit, and here is her number and her email. Also, for Envision questions like codes, you may also want to talk to Decade. So with a site visit, there are 8 required evaluation categories. Source is one, treatment, distribution system, finished water storage, pumps, facilities, controls. Number 6, monitor reporting and data verification, system management and operation, and operator compliance with state regulations. Those are the 8 categories that are required for a sanitary survey. These are the types of sanitary surveys that we have in SDWIS. So you can see here there's not just one. And now we're going to show how you would actually enter a sanitary survey in SDWIS. So from the side menu, you would select sanitary survey, and you can add a new one. You can maintain. So if you have one in there already and you need to go back and update some information, you can click maintain and then enter your water system number. There's various ways to search for a sanitary survey. You can search by the water system. You can also search by other criteria, such as primary reason, person present, the date range, the due date, the regulating agency. So here is the menu from SDWIS, and this is the side menu I was referring to right now. You'd click Site Visit, and then you'd click Site Visit again, and that would open up Add and Maintain. So in this example right here, this is what the search box looks like. So you can put in your system number. That always seems to be the easiest for me. But there's other ways to search, and that's what we listed earlier. These are the other various ways you can search for a sanitary survey. So when you do enter the water system, if you already have sanitary surveys entered, you'll get a list of the current sanitary surveys that are in there. So if you needed to make updates to one, you could highlight it and then go Edit Select. But if you're entering a new sanitary survey, you would just go Edit Add. This is what the screen looks like. And these are those category evaluations. So from this side all the way over to these top 2, those are what's needed for SDWIS. That's what's required. These 3 are the optional. So this is just the minimum data requirements for a sanitary survey. So status would be the date completed, date of visit is needed, primary reason, regulating agency. Right now, by default, we're selecting California Drinking Water Program. I'm not sure if it's going to be different for LPAs, but I will get clarification on that. So right now, I know that Jim's directed everyone to use the California Drinking Water Program. We also need to make sure that we select at least one party present. And these are the optional items. So water system notification date, that's the date that the report was sent to the water system. Visit frequency, next due date, that's the date of the next planned inspection. This, I'm not sure, SDWIS unit can migrate at district's request. I think this had something to do when we were migrating the site visits into SDWIS. So the sanitary surveys must show all 8 of the required elements. 6 of those for sure will be no deficiencies or recommendations. If an element does not exist, you will use not applicable. And I'll give you an example of that. And other categories have not been defined, so you can use that at the LPA's discretion. One thing we want to make sure to let everyone know is that at this time we are not using the option or the drop-down selection of significant deficiencies. And that's because at this time we don't have a definition for a significant deficiency. So again, these are what we're going to be using. No deficiencies or recommendations. That's going to be our default. We don't want to use the option of significant deficiencies. And not applicable, an example of that would be if a water system does not have treatment facilities, you would select not applicable because they don't have that there for their water system. So again, these are the required items that we're going to need when you enter a sanitary survey. So the status, completed, the primary reason, sanitary survey, again, regulating agency, the Drinking Water Program, California Drinking Water Program, the date of the visit, and then again, these 8 items. And right here, this is where I was saying if a water system does not have a treatment facility, you would go ahead and select not applicable. And we want to make sure that we have at least one selection for party present. Here in the district offices, they put their staff, the CDPH, or actually our drinking water staff, they select them down here. Again, these are the optional fields that you can put the information in for, the water system notification date and the next due date. SDWIS will actually calculate the next due date for you if you want it to do that. So next due date frequency, so here we have, like I said, SDWIS will calculate the next site visit date for you. You can let SDWIS calculate it for you. You can enter it directly if you'd like. And so these are just the instructions on how to have SDWIS do that. You enter the frequency and press calculate next due date. At this time, we do not want to associate a site visit with a violation type because that will generate a candidate violation if the site visit's not completed on time. And so we don't want those candidate violations in SDWIS because they do get reported. And Modified Drinking Water Watch will also list the next due date. So for site visits covering multiple days, we are only requiring the date for the completed site visit. Per EPA's guidance, SNSV means that the date a sanitary survey visit was conducted in which all 8 components have been evaluated for the entire water system. So SDWIS does not include a code for partial sanitary surveys. Or actually, I'm sorry, we do have a code for partial sanitary surveys, and we do have a code for partial final sanitary surveys, but at this time, this SNSV is what we want recorded in SDWIS. Other items for consideration. At this time, other site visit types have not been defined. So we don't have a business need right now to identify these other types of site visits. This could happen in the future, but use your best judgment. Again, significant deficiencies, we don't have a definition for those at this time. When we do get more information, we will let everybody know. And in order to enter a sanitary survey in SDWIS, you will need to have a user account. So a lot of times staff will go out in the field and conduct a sanitary survey, and then our SDWIS coordinator here in the office will actually enter that sanitary survey for them in SDWIS. And that concludes sanitary survey. I am going to give an example of a sanitary survey, but before I do, does anybody have any questions? Let me show you who I have as attending today so that if somebody else has showed up, I can add them. Should I add anybody to this list? Boy, you guys are a quiet bunch today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of sanitary survey in SDWIS. Let me go ahead and bring up. Has everyone been able to log into the test drive team server? Is anyone having any issues? Has anybody tried?
Yeah, we did last week and haven't had any issues.
Okay, and everyone's able to log in to SDWIS, both versions, production and test drive team without any issues? I haven't received any emails, so I'm assuming everybody's okay logging in. Okay, so here's the side menu. Again, so I logged into SDWIS. I went to site visits, and I'm going to go ahead and add a site visit for a water system. And so here it shows you the site visit screen, and so I'm going to go ahead and enter the water system number. So it brings up my water system. I highlight it and click Edit Select because that's the water system I want to use. Now, if I wanted to skip that whole selecting the water system, I could have just entered my water system and clicked Tab, and it'll just show the water system name. So we're going to go ahead and say this is a completed water system site visit. Let me see here. Hold on just a sec. Let me try to get, let's do a date of, so that's the date of the visit. So our primary reason is sanitary survey, finished. So by default, we have California Drinking Water Program. This default, I believe, if you say no deficiency, no recommendations, you click that, you can actually default all of the categories to say that. And it'll automatically put no deficiencies, recommendations for all of them. So for this water system, I'm going to say that they didn't have a treatment facility. I'm pretty sure they do, but this is just to show you that you can say not applicable. And if you don't want to select security, financial, and other, because those are optional, you don't have to. You can say none. Then we want to make sure that we associate party present. So you click associate, enter the name. I should be in test drive team. So then it brings up the menu of names to select from. You highlight, and then you go edit, select. So there's the staff that was present. Now you can schedule the next due date if you'd like. And that's where you do the visit frequency, and you would calculate it. So we have our 8 categories selected. We have our date of our visit. We have it completed. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And there's our sanitary survey. And to back out of this screen, you always want to make sure you go up to File and Exit. Does anybody have any questions? So if you have a sanitary survey that you want to look up for a water system, you can go to Site Visit and then Maintain. Enter your water system and then do a search. And here you'll get a list of all of the site visits that were entered for this water system. Sometimes you can use the search feature or the sort feature because there's no real order here. So if you wanted to, you could sort them. You could sort them by the number, the status, the date of the visit, and then SDWIS will go ahead and sort it that way. So if you're looking for a specific year, you can do that. So that's just some little features that SDWIS has. Okay, if there's no questions, let me check real quick, see if anyone has any questions. We'll move on to violations. And nobody new's joined us. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about violations and enforcement actions. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is basic violations and enforcement action entry into SDWIS. We're going to talk about violation types, how to enter violations in SDWIS, how to enter an enforcement action into SDWIS, how to associate a violation to an enforcement action, and then how to close the violation. This is what we're not going to be covering today. We're not going to talk about MCL compliance determination. We are not going to discuss when to take an enforcement action. We're not going to talk about entering deficiencies or standard responses, compliance schedules, PN schedules, and assistant actions. If you have additional questions about violations, more specifically like compliance questions, I would contact Wendy Kilu. So violations versus enforcement. So violation is what the water system violated. Enforcement actions and OXs is what type of enforcement action the LPA issued to the public water system or to the water system. So when to enter a violation or an enforcement action. So you're going to enter a violation for which the LPA has primacy to enforce. So case one, when addressing enforcement action for multiple violations, an example of that would be quarterly MCL violations based on the running annual average. So you have a water system and it has a violation for the first quarter. So you would enter one enforcement action, and you would associate that enforcement action back to the violation. So when the second quarter comes, they have another violation. So that original enforcement action that you entered, you would associate that back to the second violation. And that also works for the violation in the third quarter. Say they have a violation in the third quarter, you would associate that one enforcement action to the third violation and also to the fourth. So case two is one addressing enforcement action for each violation. So this would be like monthly TCR violations. So for month one, they are out of compliance, so you issue a violation, but you would also enter a separate enforcement action and associate it back to that month one violation. So say month two, they're in violation again, so you would enter an enforcement action in SDWIS, and then you would associate that enforcement action to the month two violation. And it's so on for three, and so on for month four. So now we're going to talk about violation types. There's two types of violations in SDWIS. We have compliance period violations, and we have violation period violations. So for compliance period violations, these are violations that occur during a defined period of time, such as a calendar quarter, month, or year. Examples would be MCL violations and M&R violations. So each compliance period that a water system is out of compliance, that would mean that you would issue a new violation in SDWIS. And for a compliance period violation, you need to have the begin date and the end date, and you also need to make sure that the monitoring period is in SDWIS. And this is based on the standardized monitoring framework. And I will go ahead and send a copy to everybody again. That'll be part of the documents that I'll send out to everyone. TCR violations fall under the compliance period violation. Again, we need to make sure that we have the begin date, the end date, and the monitoring period. So this is just a visual of what a compliance period type violation, how the quarters fall in the year. So this would be the first quarter from January 1st through March 31st. This would be the second quarter. So what we're showing here is that the compliance period runs from January 1st to March 31st. And the compliance period here for the second quarter runs from April 1st to June 30th. And it's always the beginning of the month and the last day of the month for the ending. So these are monthly, actually quarterly compliance period type violations. This is an annual compliance period type violation. So this would run for the whole year. This is the standardized monitoring framework that I referred to earlier. And it just kind of breaks down the IOCs, the SOCs, and the VOCs. And now we're going to talk about violation period type violations. So the violation type period violations begin the day the water system failed to complete a report or activity, and it would actually end the day the system returns to compliance. Examples of that would be CCR, LCR, PN, and treatment technique violations. Normally, only one violation is entered, and sometimes these can last months and even years. So the begin date would be the first day that the water system was deemed out of compliance. The end date on these violations will be left blank, and the duration will be left blank as well. Monitoring period is left blank. This is an example of a violation period type violation. So this is the date that the violation began. And so it would stay open until the system returned to compliance. Once the system has returned to compliance, then that date would be entered in SDWIS, and that would be the end date. Looks like this got chopped off here, but it's just letting you know that the violation period ran from the beginning when it was out of compliance, and then the end was when it was returned to compliance. So here's some general violation types. So MCL violations generally fall under the compliance period violations. M&R can be both compliance period or violation period violations. Treatment techniques are mostly violation period violations. LCR, CCR, and PN are violation period type violations. Now, I'm going to also send you a memo that Jim had sent out to the district staff. This is when we were bringing over the violations from PICME and migrating them into SDWIS. It doesn't really pertain to us anymore, but it had some good information in it, such as these tables here, where it shows you the violation type and name, and then it shows what type of period it falls under. And I felt like this was still good information to have. So I'll go ahead and send that with the documents that I'll be sending you guys. We just recently created an LPA entry violation guide. And so this goes over each violation. So we have our O1 MCL violation, and it will help you when you want to enter this into SDWIS. So it tells you here the violation type, the storette code that you guys use. Now I'm going to give you that table so that you can convert it from storette to analyte. And I'll send this entry guide also. We did send them, I know Wendy did send them out last year, but I'll go ahead and try to send it to you again. Hopefully it's not too big of a document for your email. These are the fields in SDWIS that we're going to be entering information in: the determination date, violation type, analyte code, state violation period, analysis results. Some of the violations require you to put the results, and there's a certain field for that in SDWIS, the status and status date. So in general, all violations are associated to an addressing enforcement action, and all violations are returned to compliance, or OX, in SDWIS when they are returned to compliance. So for enforcement actions, we also have a couple of documents that are there to assist you. There's the Enforcement Action Entry Guide. These are addressing actions that are reported to EPA, and these are the non-addressing actions that are not reported to EPA. And this is all in the Enforcement Action Entry Guide. These codes are there. So an addressing action is a citation or order, and it must reference the specific provision of the statute or regulation that has been violated. It must direct the system to comply with the provisions of the statute or regulation that has been violated, or it must detail compliance steps to be taken by the system to address the continuing violation. And it must inform the system that the failure to comply with the citation or order is in and of itself an enforceable action. So again, in general, all addressing enforcement actions are associated to one or more violations. And the fields that we'll be using for the enforcement action would be the system number, the action type, the status, and it's usually taken, the status date, that's when the system was returned to compliance, that's the date, and then the associated violations. So when the system is returned to compliance, you will enter a SOX enforcement action in SDWIS. Violations that do not need to be SOX are TCR violations. SOX actions are entered for federal enforceable violation that the LPA has primacy to enforce, and sometimes even federal enforceable violations that the LPA does not have primacy to enforce. So this is an example of a federal enforceable violation that the LPA has primacy to enforce. So you have a violation for quarter 1, then you would enter the enforcement action. You would associate that enforcement action back to the violation, and then once that water system returns to compliance, this is an example for all four, where all four quarters they were out of compliance and they had a violation. So kind of like the first example I gave, where you associated the enforcement action, one enforcement action back to each violation. So it's just kind of a recap of that. But this time, you would enter an OX action once the water system was returned to compliance, and then you would associate that OX action back to all four violations. So this is a violation that the LPA does not have primacy to enforce. So that means that there was a violation issued for the 4 quarters, and no enforcement action was entered, but they returned to compliance. So you would take that OX action and you would associate it back to all 4 of those violations. Now, I know this is something that's happened with our districts and the water systems. I know that there were some violations that were issued that weren't issued by the district offices. I don't know if that works or if that occurs with the LPA systems, but I included it just in case it does. I don't know if somebody can share if they are familiar with a situation like this. Okay, so SOX actions are entered in SDWIS as an enforcement action. So the end date would equal the date you determine that the water system has returned to compliance by meeting the requirements. You would enter the original enforcement action number in the comment field. These are some of the fields that are required for us to enter information in SDWIS. So that would be the determination date. So that's the date the system was returned to compliance. Remarks. You can enter any additional enforcement action information. So here's some examples of entering a violation and associating it to an enforcement action, and then entering the enforcement action and associating it to the violation. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions? Let me check the chat box and see if anyone typed anything. No? Okay, so to enter a violation in SDWIS, from the side menu here, you would go under monitoring, you would click that little plus button, and then you would go down to violation, and then you would, if you're entering a new violation, you would click add, and then enter your water system number. Once the menu comes up, and it, like earlier with the site visit, it'll ask you, SDWIS can ask you, are you talking about this water system? And you say, that's the one I want. So you highlight it, and then you would go up to edit and select. So here is where we're going to start entering our violation information. So we would enter our determination date. So that's the date that it was determined that this water system was out of compliance. And then in the violation type, if you know your violation type, if you know the number, you could enter it here. Otherwise, you can just click this little box right here, and a menu will come up, and you can scroll through and see which violation you want to choose. This is the violation period. So if it's a month, you would say it's January. It's the month of January. You would enter 1/1 2015, and then you can click over here, duration would be month, and it would automatically populate the end date for you. If it's a quarter, you could select quarter, and it'll automatically populate the end date for that quarter. And again, like I was saying earlier, if you want to see the menu of violation types that we have in SDWIS, you would just click that little side arrow box, and then this is the menu that comes up. And over here, you can see that we have the violation types for each violation. So if you selected an 01 violation, it's a compliance period violation. So you would highlight, and then you would go edit select. And then, so here's your 02 violation. The next thing you're going to need to do is enter your analyte code. So it works the same way. If you know your analyte code, you can just enter your analyte code here, or you can hit this button and you'll get the menu of the different analyte codes. And for each violation, when you click that analyte code button, it's going to give you the option of the analyte codes for that specific violation. So sometimes you may only see like 2 analyte codes here. It doesn't always show all of the analyte codes. It's just in this situation or this case, these are all the analyte codes that we can choose from. So you select your analyte code, and then you enter your the violation period. Again, since this was a quarter, you can select quarter, and it'll automatically tell you what the end date is, and then it automatically will populate this federal violation period down here. And then here's where the monitoring period would go. In this section right here, you would click this button and determine where this falls in the monitoring period. So some violations actually require you to enter the analysis result. So you would enter the analysis result here, and then you would select the units of measure, and then you want to hit record MCL, and what that'll do is it'll automatically populate the MCL for that violation. And then in this section down here, because we're entering the violation information. So in this section right here is where we would enter the enforcement action. So you would click Associate Enforcement Action. And because it would be a new one, you would go up to Edit Add. And then a different menu or a different screen comes up. And so now you want to find your action type or your enforcement action. So you would click this button right here, and it's going to give you some options to choose from. And these are the different action types. So in this case, they're selecting an SFL. So you would highlight it and go Edit Select. And so it shows you your enforcement action type. And sometimes there's more than one, so you want to make sure that you click or you highlight the one that you wanted. And then because when we just entered that enforcement action, it adds it to the menu of the other enforcement actions. So then it takes you back to the screen, and you're going to want to highlight the one you just added and go Edit Select. And so now we're back in that violation window or screen. So here we selected the enforcement action that we're associating to our violation. And then we would just click OK. So this is if you are entering, say you've already entered your violation, and now you want to enter a new enforcement action and associate it back to your violation. So in this case, they're entering an SOX because the water system has been returned to compliance. So you would go to that side menu, and instead of going under monitoring, because monitoring was for when we entered the violation, now we're going under enforcement because we're going to enter an enforcement action for that violation. So you go under enforcement, and then you would click add. So here we entered our water system. We went and grabbed our enforcement action type, and that was the SOX action. And then now what we want to do is associate it back to our violation. So in the first example, we entered a violation, we associated an enforcement action. Now we're entering an enforcement action, but we want to take that enforcement action and we want to associate it back to the violation because we're returning that water system has returned to compliance, so we're OXing that violation. So under associated violations, we go in and we click associate, and that's going to give us a list of violations for that water system. And sometimes when you have multiple violations, you can go up to that view and you can do a search or you can do a sort, and that's where you can sort it by date. So there's various ways that you can sort them because sometimes it's kind of hard trying to scroll through. So you highlight your violation that you want to OX, and then you go edit and select. And so here, this is where we're saying the status. We want to select as taken, and we want to have that status date when they return to compliance. Also, we have our violation is selected that we're associating to this enforcement action, and it's showing up here in this box. So then after this, we would click OK to save all of this information. And that concludes how to enter the violation, associate an enforcement action, and then go back and enter a new enforcement action and associate it to that violation. These are some of the documents I was referring to that I'm going to send to everyone. And so we have our LPA violation entry guide. We have those appendixes, that memo from Jim that shows the different violation periods for the violations. And again, if you have any technical questions about compliance issues, I would direct those to Wendy. If you have questions on how to get through screens in SDWIS, you can shoot me an email or you can call me. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Is everyone still awake?
Rachel, this is Kathy. I do have a question. When we were back on entering violations, there was that determination date. Is that the same as our aware date that we use right now?
I believe so. I believe it is the determination date is the aware date.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll go ahead and demonstrate how to enter the violation, and then, everything that we discussed right now in SDWIS. So again, I'm in the test drive team server. Make sure I'm still logged in. So what we want to do is we want to enter a new violation. So we go to monitoring, open up violation. It's going to be new, so we're going to add. We're going to get our water system. So here is the screen, the violation maintenance screen, where we start entering the violation information. So again, if you know your number, you can just type in your number, or if you want to grab that or see that menu, you can click that button on the side, and it'll bring up all the violation types that we have here in SDWIS. Then we want to highlight our violation type, go up to edit, select.
Rachel, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Above that, where you were entering the violation year that it automatically filled in for you, is that the federal fiscal year? And if we're entering a violation from a previous year, we would change that?
Well, the federal violation period, what it does is it takes the information from the state violation period. So it will populate here. And I do believe you can change this.
Right, but that's the violation period. But up top where it says violation year, at the very top, right underneath the public water system number.
Oh, right here?
Yeah. That automatically populated, but if we were going in and entering an old violation that hadn't been entered,
you could change this.
But is that a calendar year? Is it a fiscal year, or is it a federal fiscal year?
Oh,
That's what I need to know, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. I can ask Jim. Let's see real quick. Sometimes if you go to help will bring up some, it'll kind of give you definitions of the fields. Let's see if it tells us. Because we're not talking about determination date. We're talking about the violation year. Let's see. Oh, okay, here we go. It says enter a 4-digit fiscal year in the optional violation year field. This field defaults to the violation fiscal year in which the determination date falls. Does that answer your question? So it says it defaults to the federal fiscal year.
So it's the federal fiscal year that you're aware of the violation, not when the actual violation occurred, which is how we do it now.
Let's see, the federal fiscal year starts October 1st through September. Okay, so what you're asking is this considered the federal fiscal year that you became aware of the violation, or is it the federal fiscal year that the violation occurred?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good question. Let me write this down real quick. Okay. I will ask Jim and see what we're using for that field. And is that Case that's asking?
Yeah, this is Kathy with Union County.
Kathy. Okay, good. I'll make sure I get back to you on that. I can actually, when I find the answer, I'll send it to everybody. That way everyone knows.
Thank you. We would appreciate that.
Okay. Okay, so we entered our violation type. It's an O2. Now we're going to go and we're going to select the analyte code. And so we have a whole bunch that we can select from. So we're going to go ahead and highlight arsenic, go edit, select, and then we're going to enter the violation period. So for this violation, I'm going to say January 1st of this year. And this is a quarter, so if I go over here and I select quarter and I hit tab, SDWIS automatically populates the end date for me, and it also puts in the federal violation period down here. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure that for this one I put in the analysis result. And if I were to try to just say I forgot, say I was trying to hurry up and get this done, if I say okay to just finish this violation, SDWIS will actually let you know that you can't continue until you enter the analysis result. So I go up here to analysis result and I say, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. Okay. And go ahead and enter the analysis result. Make sure I select my units of measure. And then what I want to do is hit record MCL. And again, if I believe if you try to hit OK, I think SDWIS wants you to click record MCL. You want to make sure that you enter your units of measure. So just to kind of review, we have our violation type, we have our analyte code, we entered which period this was for, and if you notice, the monitoring period was automatically populated here, so it's letting me know that it's for the first quarter for the 2015 year. Now what we want to do is go and associate an enforcement action. And again, it's going to give me all of these enforcement actions that are currently in SDWIS for this system. But I don't want to use any of these that are already in there. I want to enter a new one. So I go up to Edit, Add. So again, the water system that I'm working under, and I want to select from our menu here. I highlight the enforcement action, and I go Edit, Select. So we have taken, we have today's date as a status date. You can change this, say it wasn't today, say it was a week ago. You can put that there, the date in this field. So then you want, so we selected the enforcement action. Hit OK. So this is what I was saying earlier. What it does, what SDWIS does is it adds your enforcement action to all of the other enforcement actions. So you have to make sure that, oh, okay, mine is right here. This is the one I just entered. So you highlight that enforcement action you just entered, and you go Edit, Select. And now you can see it has, in the violation that we just entered, it's associated the enforcement action down here. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to enter my violation, entered my analysis result, entered my enforcement action that we took, and everything looks good, so I click OK. This is just telling me that earlier this was entered before, and so it's just letting me know that there's a duplicate. So let's see. Let me see. I know we had entered this before, or I did before our presentation. So SDWIS is like, you did this already. So let me see if I can change the analyte code and if it'll take it with that. Okay, so this is the one I did earlier. So SDWIS was saying you can't enter the same exact violation with the same exact analyte code for the same period of time. That's a duplicate. So what I did was I entered it again, but for the 1001 analyte code. Okay, so it's put my violation in here with all the other violations. So to me, everything looks good. So to save that, you always want to back out of your SDWIS screens. Instead of like going over here and clicking off to the side, you want to go up to File and then hit Exit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to enter the Return to Compliance Enforcement Action. Does anybody have any questions at this time before I go forward with the next example? Okay, so we're not going to go to monitoring because that's not where enforcement actions are. We're going to go under Enforcement, and we're going to open up Enforcement Actions, and we're going to add a new enforcement action because this is an SOX, the Water System Return to Compliance. So we're going to close out that violation by entering an SOX. Okay, so there's our water system. Now here is where we want to enter the enforcement action of an SOX. So I highlight my enforcement action. I go up to Edit, Select, and so it populates my SOX information here. Of course, you know, I'm using today's date for everything, but the dates are going to vary. So now what we want to do is we want to go down and we want to click Associate because we don't have anything here in this Associated Violations field. So we want to go look for our violation. So we click Associate. And this is where sometimes you have multiple violations, and this is where we had one enforcement action, and it would be associated to multiple violations. This is a perfect example because I have two different analyte codes, same violation period. So you would make sure that you grab all of the violations that are going to be associated to that enforcement action, that return to compliance enforcement action. I'm going to go ahead and select the first one that I entered. So I highlight it, and then I click Edit, Select. And so my enforcement action is here. It's an SOX. My associated violation is here. Everything looks good, so I click OK. And so this is just letting me know that I entered this SOX action. To get out of the screen, I click File Exit.
Rachel, what if we were OXing a bunch of violations, like years worth of quarterly violations? Would we have to go in individually and choose each violation separately, or is there a command where you can just hold down a key or something and select multiple entries at one time?
I haven't had to do that myself. Let me see. Let's check that OX violation. Let's see. Let's choose this one. Let me see if it'll let me. So I highlighted 2. Let me see if it'll let me select. I believe I can. So it looks like if you highlight, I even saw select all, but if you highlight multiple violations and then you go edit select, it associates that SOX action to multiple at the same time. So, this is not right. I'm not going to, but I was just showing you as an example that, yeah, it looks like you can do that. Does that answer your question, Kathy?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So, so that completes our presentation and our demonstration. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, if you do have any questions after, you can always email me, you can call me. I'm going to go ahead and send out the procedure documents and the information that I was trying to share with you, but I wasn't able to do it through WebEx. Also, I was letting everyone know earlier that at the top of your WebEx screen, there's tabs, and I did put in a couple of documents in there. I know that you can look at them and then it had the option of printing, but I'll go ahead and send them out anyways. So we went over, so far we've done inventory, basic inventory, how to enter a water system. We went over site visits. We went over violations, how to enter a violation.
The leader has disconnected. This call will now end.